Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This video today, we're going to talk about how to not feel pushy or how to not come across as feeling pushy, because that's the worst thing, right? And you have a stigma about sales. You think all salesmen are pushy and you don't want to be like that, so you don't want to apply pressure, which is why you never close deals. Well, I don't want to be pushy. That sounds noble, right? It sounds professional, but most of the time, what you're actually saying to yourself is, I'm uncomfortable talking about money, which is crazy, right? Because you're an accountant. Excuse me, I had to burp there. But the thing about it is that discomfort is actually costing you clients, right? Because while you're trying to not be pushy, your competitor is signing the client. So today I want to completely change the way you think about sales. Because elite accountants don't sell, they diagnose, they lead, they advise, they help prospects make decisions. So once you understand the psychology behind buying behavior, you'll realize something. The prospect actually wants you to lead the conversation. So let's talk about why. That leads me to module 1, sales psychology number 1. And it's people don't buy accounting. So the first thing every accountant gets wrong is that nobody wakes up in the morning excited to buy your bookkeeping. They didn't go to bed and dream about payroll overnight, right? And they don't get excited about tax preparation. What they're buying from you would be the outcome of using your services. And that goes with anything that someone's selling, right? So let's say a business owner hires you. What are they really buying? Write this down. They're buying less stress, more certainty, more profit, more time with family, better decisions, peace of mind, and confidence, right? Human beings move toward pleasure and away from pain. So they move towards pleasure and they move away from pain. And that's one of the oldest concepts in psychology, right? Because people don't buy because they understand your service. People buy because they believe their future will improve. So if I can speak in a language that's all about improving their future, probably more inclined to close the deal, right? You have to understand your job is not explaining bookkeeping. Your job is to connect bookkeeping to a better future. So if you can do those things and not info dump with all the features and services, all that stupid stuff that they already assume that you have, and speak to their needs, then you'll probably close more deals. Hey, let's go to sales psychology number 2. All right, sales psychology number 2. I call this the curse of knowledge, okay? And I know that sounds weird, but most accountants, you guys know so much. You know too much almost sometimes. It is true, right? Think about it. You spend years learning accounting. Well, understand this, that your clients have not, right? So what happens is you start explaining things that they don't care about. You start talking about reconciliations, journal entries, financial statements, compliance requirements, and you know what the prospect hears? Blah, 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 accounting stuff. They don't know what it means, or they do their own accounting. You have to understand this, right? You have to speak to their language. So my best recommendation is act like you're talking to a 2-year-old and communicate in that way, in that language, and break things down that way. This goes here and this affects that. That's how you're going to get through to them. Because they don't buy accounting, they're buying certainty, right? So remember this, right? If I want to be an expert, I need to explain processes, okay? And if I want to close more deals, I have to explain outcomes. So explain processes, that's what experts do, okay? But also explain outcomes. Processes and outcomes, all tying to how that fixes your future, how that solves the problem that they're currently experiencing, right? It's not that I get in there and just go through, well, this is the you don't want to get on the phone and just pitch process. You need to obviously build rapport. I'm doing a little bit extra work for you guys right here, but you need to do a rapport and discovery phase, and then use the process that you have, okay, and tie that to the outcome after using your services and using your processes, how their business will improve. So that's pretty much all you need to do, and you'll close 99% of your deals, honestly. Well, as long as you're aggressive in closing and you assume the sale, right? Because if you do all the things right, they'll probably always go down for the deal. And if you sell the right way, you don't want to, ask for the sell and then be hesitant. And if you watch a lot of my videos, all that will make sense. So anyway, let's go to the next thing right here. I call this the Elite Discovery Framework. Okay, the Elite Discovery Framework. So you need to write this down. The best salespeople in the world, they're not presenters, they're investigators. I want every sales conversation to feel like a business consultation, right? Not a sales pitch, not an interrogation, but a consultation. So the framework that you need to use, right? Here's current state. Tell me about your business. These are things you need to be asking. Okay, so current state, where are they at right now? This is a framework that I'm giving you, okay? 1 second here. All right, so that's why I don't read work stuff when I'm working. All right, so current state. Let's write this down. This is what you need to ask. Just tell me about your business. How are you currently handling your bookkeeping? How are you handling taxes right now? And who's helping you with your financial decisions? So they're in their current state, and I'm diagnosing right now. All right, next I need to identify the problems within that, right? So I would ask them, well, what's frustrating you most? And you need to be writing all of these down and then actually asking them in your sales conversations with these business owners. So what's frustrating you the most? What isn't working? What keeps slipping through the cracks? What concerns you most moving forward, right? Next, we have consequences. So you have to understand, this is where elite salespeople separate themselves, right? Is that I got to make them realize if they don't do this, they're going to have consequences. Most accountants stop at problems, but you guys need consequences. We got to drive those consequences home. How am I going to do it? Questions, and they're going to sell themselves, right? They're going to build urgency themselves. So you have to ask them, what's that costing you? Right? And how much time does that take you every month? Hey, Janet, well, what happens if nothing changes? Where do you think we're going to be at in 6 months, right? Talk to me about that. How much revenue do you think is being lost because of this? So what happens is now the prospect starts to feel the cost of inaction, right? And I talk about this a lot. This is called loss aversion. Loss aversion. So psychologists have found people are more motivated to avoid loss than achieve gain. Write that down. Meaning that a prospect may not care about making another 10 grand, but they deeply care about losing 10 grand. Right? All right, let's go to sales psychology number 3. Sales psychology number 3. What does that look like, guys? People trust their own conclusions more than they trust yours. So how would I get someone to sell themselves, right? Questions. It's really simple. So write this down. People trust their own conclusions. This is one of the most important sales principles you'll probably ever learn in your entire life. People don't believe what you tell them. They believe what they tell them. They believe what they tell themselves. So let me read that again for you, and you need to write it down. People don't believe what you tell them. They believe what they tell themselves. That's why questions are more powerful than statements. So instead of saying, hey, John, you need bookkeeping, you need to ask, what happens if your books stay behind another year? Instead of saying you need advisory services, ask, how much easier would decision making be if you had accurate numbers every month? And we could grow those numbers. You're bringing in X amount. Would you like to double that? I can show you how. What would doubling those numbers do for you? Boom. Does that make sense? So it's always questions and they tell themselves. All right, so what you need to have happen is that the prospect creates the answer, the prospect creates the emotional connection, and the prospect creates the urgency. That's infinitely more powerful than you trying to convince them. Selling isn't telling, selling is asking questions. This is one of my favorite topics we're going to cover in today's video is why accountants sound pushy. Well, because you don't know how to sell. That's number one. So keep watching the channel, right? But in all seriousness, most accountants enter sales conversations thinking, I really hope they buy. So you have to understand, sales is mindset. Anything I think up here, okay, if I believe it enough, my physical body will act to it and I will go achieve those results. So it all starts with belief in oneself, right? So it's all mindset first. But hoping someone buys is terrible. The moment you think that way, your behavior changes. You become needy. You start chasing. You start talking too much. You start defending your price. You start forcing the conversation. Instead, I need you to think. Let's figure out if I can actually help. Okay, that's how doctors think. That's how attorneys think. That's how consultants think. That's how the best accountants think who have big firms, right? Because they sell and close a lot of deals. So you have to understand, though, too, you're not there to close everyone. You're there to identify who you can help. So ironically, the less desperate you are for the sale, the more sales you make. It's pretty nuts how that works. All right, let's title this module right here, the status frame. The status frame. This is advanced, right? People trust certainty. They don't trust pressure. They trust certainty. When a prospect senses uncertainty, they become uncertain. When they sense confidence, they become confident. This is called emotional transfer. And sales is a transfer of emotion. The emotional state of the advisor often becomes the emotional state of the prospect. And that's why elite professionals speak differently. So instead of saying, maybe this could help, say this instead. Based on what you've shared, here's what I'd recommend. Instead of what do you think, say this. Here's the path I'd take if I were in your position. So one sounds like a salesperson, and the other one sounds like an advisor. And you got to sound like the advisor, all right? So how to present your services. Title the next module, how to present your services. How do we do it, right? Number one, never lead with features, ever. They don't care. All right, please stop saying, and write this down. Do not say we do reconciliations, payroll processing, monthly reports, and tax planning. Instead say, based on what you've told me, here's what I believe needs to happen. Then summarize. Your books are behind, you're spending 12 hours a month doing work that you hate, you don't fully trust your numbers, tax season creates stress every year. Then our job is to eliminate those problems. Now you're presenting solutions, not services. So big difference right there. All right, let's go down to the next thing. Just title this the close. So you have to understand, guys, that the best closes don't feel like closes. They feel like really good informed decisions. So you need to use this framework constantly. So, hey, let me make sure I've got everything right. Then summarize everything they've told you. Pain, problems, goals, frustrations, desired outcomes. And then you need to ask, hey, did I miss anything? They'll almost always say no, right? Perfect. Now say, based on everything you shared, I believe we're a good fit to help you out here. Boom. Pause. Let them think. Most salespeople are terrified of silence, but the elite salespeople, guys, they use silence. You got to use silence because pressure comes from talking and confidence comes from listening. So the reason sales feels pushy isn't because sales is pushy. It's because you're focusing too much on yourself. You're thinking about your commission, your price, your quota, your fear of rejection. Can I grow the firm? Will I grow the firm? Right? But elite salespeople focus on the prospect, their goals, their problems, their future. When you genuinely understand someone's problems, and when you genuinely know that you can help, when you diagnose the situation correctly, then selling stops feeling like selling because you're no longer convincing, you're leading people now. So you have to understand that the highest paid accountants in the world aren't paid because they're the smartest, they're paid because they're trusted advisors. And trusted advisors know how to make people make very good decisions. Grow the business, grow the firm. So if you liked it, like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.